"I can't afford this dress," she whispered before the gala. He said, "Then wear your scrubs." Maya Collins saved his life before she knew he had a name worth printing on buildings. By 8:43 on a Friday night, the emergency room at St. Bridget's Medical Center had already chewed through every gentle part of her. She was 11 hours into a 12-hour shift, her messy bun held together by a pen she had stolen from radiology, her teal scrubs marked with coffee near the pocket, and a small streak of blood near the hip from a patient who had apologized while bleeding on her. She had not eaten dinner. Unless half a granola bar in her scrub pocket counted as dinner, which, according to most ER nurses, it did. "Maya," Tessa Ramirez called from the nurse's station, "you look like you lost a fight with a vending machine." Maya did not look up from the chart she was finishing. The vending machine started it. Then the ambulance bay doors burst open. The paramedics rolled in an older man on a stretcher, gray-faced, sweating, his chest rising in shallow, uneven bursts. Behind them came a cluster of panicked people in suits, all speaking at once, all holding phones, all radiating the helplessness of people used to being obeyed by rooms. 68-year-old male, the paramedic reported. Syncope at a medical conference downtown, irregular rhythm, hypotensive en route, complaining of dizziness before he went down. Maya moved before anyone finished explaining how important the man was. To her, he was not important yet. He was a patient. That was enough. She helped transfer him, attached leads, checked his pulse, called out vitals, and ignored the expensive watch on his wrist that probably cost more than her car. A man in a charcoal suit kept trying to answer questions on the patient's behalf until Maya looked at him once and said, "Unless you're his heart, I need you to step back." Tessa coughed to hide a laugh. The monitor told the truth faster than any of the suits did. The rhythm was wrong. Dangerously wrong. Maya's focus narrowed to the patient's breathing, the monitor, the doctor's orders, the small signs that separated a bad night from a death certificate. She caught the subtle change before the room did the drop in pressure, the worsening pallor, the way his eyes rolled slightly as his body began to lose the argument. "Get cardiology now," she said, "and prep for synchronized cardioversion if he keeps dropping." The ER physician, Dr. Patel, glanced at the monitor and nodded. The room snapped into motion. Maya's voice stayed calm, clipped, steady enough for everyone else to borrow from it. The man's shirt had to be cut away. It was a beautiful white shirt. Maya ruined it without hesitation. 20 minutes later, the rhythm stabilized. 40 minutes later, the man was breathing easier, pale but awake, with oxygen beneath his nose and a blanket pulled over his chest. His eyes found Maya. "What's your name?" he asked, voice rough. "Maya Collins." He looked down at the remains of his shirt, then back at her. "If you're planning to complain about the shirt," she said, adjusting his IV line, "I've heard that speech before, usually from men who were very attached to buttons." A weak laugh escaped him. It startled the suits. It pleased Maya more than she expected. "No complaint," he murmured. "I was never that fond of buttons." Only later did she learn he was Robert Hale, retired cardiac surgeon, founder of the Hale Medical Foundation, and father of Julian Hale, the man whose name appeared on hospital wings, research grants, and scholarship plaques across the city. A few days later, the invitation arrived at St. Bridget's in an envelope so expensive it looked like it had health insurance. Gold-stamped. Cream paper. Her full name spelled correctly, which felt like a trap. The Hale Medical Foundation was inviting her to its annual gala to honor healthcare heroes whose courage and professionalism had changed lives. Maya read the sentence twice in the break room. Tessa leaned over her shoulder. "Healthcare hero," Tessa said. "Does that come with a cape or just more charting?" Maya turned the card. At the bottom, in elegant black script, were 3 words that made her stomach drop. "Black tie formal." Tessa whistled. "That means you need a dress that did not come from Target clearance." My best dress is from Target clearance. I know. I borrowed it for my cousin's baptism and it judged me. At first, Maya laughed. Then she went home and did the math. Dress rental, shoes, hair, makeup, Uber because parking downtown would be ridiculous. Lost wages if she had to switch a shift. The total climbed fast, quietly, cruelly. Almost the same as her mother's respiratory medication for the month. Diane Collins sat at the kitchen table with her oxygen tubing resting against one cheek, pretending not to watch Maya stare at the invitation. What's that? Nothing. Maya, I raised you. Your nothing face has paperwork. Maya handed it over. Diane read it slowly. Pride came first. Then understanding. Then the ache of a mother who knew exactly what kind of arithmetic her daughter was doing. You saved that man. I did my job. And now they want you to dress like someone who doesn't need her paycheck. Maya looked away. Diane reached across the table, her thin fingers covering Maya's hand. You stood in that ER with hands steady enough to keep a man alive, she said. It would be a bitter thing if a ballroom made you feel small. Maya swallowed. Later, after her mother went to rest, Maya placed the gold-stamped invitation on the kitchen table beside the pharmacy bill. They looked like two different Americas lying inches apart. One wanted to honor her. The other knew exactly what that honor would cost. Maya did not know if she would go. But for the first time, she understood that being celebrated could still hurt if celebration required her to pretend she belonged to a world that refused to see the real one she lived in. The dress shop smelled like perfume, new fabric, and financial danger. Maya Collins stood in front of a three-way mirror in downtown Chicago, still carrying the tired posture of a woman who had come straight from a hospital shift. Her hair was clean but imperfect, her eyes shadowed, and her feet were already suspicious of the borrowed heels Tessa had forced her to try on. The dress was beautiful. That was the worst part. Midnight blue, soft at the shoulders, fitted at the waist, the kind of gown that made the mirror behave more kindly than real life usually did. For one brief second, Maya could almost imagine herself walking into the Hale Foundation Gala and not being mistaken for someone there to check a donor's blood pressure. Then she tried to breathe. The bodice resisted. This dress doesn't allow lungs to have their own opinions, she said. Tessa Ramirez, sitting on a velvet chair with the seriousness of a battlefield commander, looked up from a rack of rejected gowns. Rich people don't need lung opinions. They have valet parking. Maya turned sideways, frowned, and nearly lost balance in the heels. Tessa made a noise somewhere between a laugh and a medical alert. The sales associate hovered nearby with polite patience and eyes that had already calculated Maya's budget from her work shoes. She was not rude. Rudeness would have been easier to forgive. She was simply careful in the way people became when they did not believe you belonged near expensive things. When Maya asked the rental price, the woman smiled too softly. $480. Before deposit. Before alterations. Before shoes that did not make her walk like a newborn deer with student loans. Maya looked at the price tag. Her mind did what it always did now. It translated luxury into survival. Her mother's portable oxygen rental. The electric bill. 2 prescription refills. A payment on the student loan she pretended not to hate. Groceries if she avoided the good fruit. The dress stopped being beautiful. It became arithmetic. Tessa saw her face change. Maya stepped back into the fitting room, pulling the curtain halfway closed. Her voice dropped until it was almost smaller than the room. I can't afford this dress. She said it to Tessa. But the sentence traveled. Outside the fitting area, Julian Hale had just entered the shop to pick up a tuxedo jacket altered for his father, who insisted on attending the gala despite everyone with medical training telling him to behave. Julian had been speaking quietly with a manager when Maya's words reached him. He did not mean to hear them, but once heard, they could not be returned. Maya stepped out a moment later in her own clothes, the gown draped carefully over one arm, as if it belonged to someone else's body. She saw Julian near the front desk and stopped. Embarrassment arrived fast and hot. Not because he was handsome, though he was. Not because he was rich, though the shop seemed to recognize his money before it recognized his face. Because he had seen her in the exact place she hated most. Not poor enough for pity, not comfortable enough for dignity to be effortless. Just a working woman doing math in a room built to make math feel shameful. Julian approached carefully. That helped, but not enough. He said he had not meant to intrude. He offered to cover whatever she needed for the gala. He said it gently, without performance. Maya still stiffened. She had been grateful for help many times in her life. She was not too proud to survive. But this was different. This was not a prescription, not rent, not groceries. This was the price of being made presentable to people who wanted to applaud her hands but not see the life attached to them. She told him she was not a personal charity project. The words were sharper than he deserved. Maybe. But she needed them sharp. Julian accepted the cut without defending himself. That surprised her. Men like him often mistook refusal for ingratitude. Instead, he looked toward the gowns, then back at Maya, and something in his face shifted from concern to recognition. The gala was his world. The invitations, the dress code, the tasteful flowers, the stage lighting, the speeches about courage. He had helped build the room that wanted to honor Maya. But it had never occurred to him that the people being honored might not be able to afford the costume required to enter it. That was not cruelty. Somehow, that made it worse. He apologized. Not with a black card. Not with a solution pressed into her hand like a receipt. He asked how she wanted to be seen. Maya did not answer right away. The question was more dangerous than money. She looked at the mirror, where the expensive dress had made her appear elegant and uncomfortable at the same time. Then she thought of the teal scrubs folded in her laundry basket at home, one pocket permanently ink-stained, one sleeve frayed from too many washes. Scrubs she had worn while pushing meds, holding hands, cleaning blood, arguing with insurance, and standing beside people when fear stripped them of pride. She said she did not want to wear borrowed silk so donors could feel better about calling her a hero. She also did not want to walk in wearing scrubs just to become a visual stunt. The brave little nurse in uniform served between dessert and the silent auction. Julian listened. Really listened. Then he said the thing that made the air change. If those scrubs are what you wore when you saved my father, they are not less formal than a gown. They are evidence. Maya stared at him. He did not smile. He did not soften the statement into flattery. Then quietly he added, "Then wear your scrubs." For a second, Maya thought he was joking. Tessa stopped pretending not to listen. Julian went on. If the gala truly meant to honor nurses, the room had to survive the sight of a real one. Not a polished symbol, not a donor-friendly version. A professional woman dressed in the clothes she wore while doing the work everyone claimed to admire. Maya's throat tightened. Fear was still there. Of course it was. Fear did not vanish because a handsome CEO said one decent sentence in a dress shop. She could already imagine the stares, the whispers, the social media captions, the way people might praise her authenticity while treating her like part of the decor. Tessa broke the tension by leaning back in her velvet chair. If you wear scrubs, please pick the ones without the coffee stain shaped like Ohio. Maya laughed despite herself. It came out small, but real. Julian promised he would not turn her into a publicity stunt. He would change the dress code to read, "Formal or professional uniform welcome." He would make sure no one could claim she had broken the rules by arriving as herself. Maya did not fully trust him. Trust was not something a rich man earned by noticing one problem after his foundation created it. But when she left the shop, she stood a little straighter. Not because a CEO had rescued her from an expensive dress, because, for the first time, Someone from that glittering world had said she did not need to change her shape to deserve respect. The ballroom was built to make ordinary people feel like mistakes. That was Maya Collins's first thought when she stepped out of the elevator and saw the chandeliers, the marble floors, the tall gold doors, and the women in gowns that moved like water under the light. Her second thought was that her shoes were cleaner than half the soles in the room. She had scrubbed them herself over the sink that afternoon until the white leather looked almost new. Her teal scrubs were freshly washed, pressed as well as scrubs could be pressed, and carefully chosen for having no stains shaped like Ohio, Texas, or any other state Tessa had forbidden. Her hair was pinned into a neat bun. Her badge was clipped to her pocket. On her chest, just above her name, sat a tiny enamel pin shaped like lungs. Diane had given it to her that morning from the couch, oxygen tubing resting against her cheek. "It's classy," her mother had said. "Nothing says formal like respiratory anatomy." Now, as Maya stood outside the ballroom, her phone buzzed. A text from Diane. "Stand straight. Scrubs wrinkle less than rich people's manners." Maya almost laughed. Almost. Then the doors opened. Every head did not turn at once. That would have been too theatrical, and rich people preferred judgment delivered in smaller, quieter doses. But eyes found her gradually. A woman near the champagne table paused mid-sip. A man in a tuxedo glanced at her badge before looking away too quickly. Two younger donors whispered behind their programs. Maya felt each stare land on the fabric of her scrubs. Not on her face. Not on her hands. On the uniform. A staff member approached with a polite smile and asked if she was with the medical team for the event. Before Maya could answer, another guest tried to hand her a coat. For one dangerous second, she wanted to disappear. She imagined walking back to the elevator, texting Tessa that the whole thing had been a terrible idea, and going home to eat toast over the sink like a normal exhausted nurse with dignity intact. Then she touched the lung pin. She stood straighter. Julian saw her from across the lobby. He was in a tuxedo, surrounded by donors, one hand around a glass he had not drunk from. The moment he noticed her, his attention changed, not dramatically. He did not abandon conversation like a man in a romance movie running through an airport. He simply excused himself with enough grace that no one could object and crossed the lobby toward her. Maya braced for the usual compliment. Beautiful, stunning, brave. Words people used when they did not know what to say but wanted credit for saying something. Julian stopped in front of her. For a moment, his eyes moved over the scrubs, the badge, the pin, the white shoes, then back to her face. "You look exactly like the person who saved my father," he said. Maya's throat tightened before she could defend herself from it. That one sentence reached a place a gown never could have. "Careful," she said. That almost sounded sincere. It was. Dangerous habit at a gala. He offered his arm, not as if she needed escorting, but as if he was asking permission to walk beside her. Maya took it. Inside the ballroom, the air smelled like roses, expensive perfume, and money trying to become virtue. Giant screens displayed the foundation logo. At every table sat people who could fund a clinic with one check and still debate the tax implications over dessert. Maya leaned slightly toward Julian. "I have never heard this many people say impact without physically touching anyone." Julian turned his head just enough to hide a smile. "I was hoping you wouldn't notice. I work ER. I notice when a man says transformational and means we named a hallway." This time, he did laugh under his breath. Across the room, Robert Hale stood slowly from his table, ignoring the aide who clearly wanted him to remain seated. He leaned on a cane, thinner than he had been in the ER, but sharp-eyed and very much alive. He opened his arms carefully. Maya stepped into the hug, gentle enough not to disturb whatever doctors had told him not to disturb. Robert looked down at her scrubs. "Better than the shirt you cut off me." "I'm still not apologizing." The shirt was losing to the monitor. Robert's laugh was rough but real. For a few minutes, with Julian on one side and Robert on the other, Maya almost forgot the stares. Almost. Then Evelyn Porter arrived with a clipboard, a headset, and the strained smile of a woman watching her perfect media layout catch fire. Evelyn was polite, too polite. She complimented Maya's powerful choice of attire, then glanced toward the photographer, the stage lighting, the step-and-repeat backdrop. Maya could see the calculations forming behind her eyes. Scrubs were not part of the visual plan. Scrubs could be moving, yes, but only if properly framed, properly captioned, properly controlled. Grant Whitaker reached them before Evelyn could say more. He was a major donor, silver-haired, smooth, and smiling in the way people smiled when they believed themselves generous. "So authentic," he said, looking at Maya's uniform with approval that felt like a pat on the head. "This is exactly the kind of real hero moment people need to see." Maya's spine tightened. Grant gestured toward the backdrop and suggested a photo. Maybe with the foundation logo behind her. Maybe holding her stethoscope. Something candid-looking but meaningful. There it was. The shift. One moment her scrubs had been proof. The next, they were becoming a prop. Julian felt it too. She saw him begin to step forward, anger flashing beneath the polish. But he stopped. Not because he did not care. Because Maya did not need him to answer for her. She needed him to stay close enough that she was not alone, and quiet enough that no one could pretend she had borrowed her dignity from him. The photographer gathered them near the backdrop. A few donors clustered around, smiling. Someone adjusted lighting. Someone else asked if Maya could turn slightly so her badge showed. Then a man near the front laughed and said he hoped the scrubs had at least been dry cleaned for the occasion. A ripple of polite laughter moved through the group. Maya went still. Julian's jaw tightened. Robert's eyes sharpened. But Maya spoke first. Her voice was calm enough to make the laughter feel foolish. "My scrubs don't need to be made fancy," she said. "They just need pockets big enough for scissors, pens, bandages, and sometimes the last bit of calm a patient has left." The room quieted. Maya looked at the donors, the cameras, the logo, all of it. "They're not formal because they're expensive," she added. "They matter because of what happens while someone is wearing them." For one suspended second, no one moved. Then Robert Hale began to clap. Slowly, firmly. Julian joined him. Not too quickly, not as rescue, as recognition. Others followed, some out of discomfort, some out of genuine respect, some because rooms like that often needed permission to find their conscience. The applause grew. Maya did not smile right away. She stood in the middle of the ballroom, in teal scrubs and white shoes, her mother's lung pin shining under the gala lights, and for the first time that night, she no longer wanted to vanish. But as the warmth of the applause surrounded her, she understood something dangerous too. Admiration could feel beautiful in the moment. It could also become another kind of hunger. Because a rich room could clap for a woman in scrubs and still decide what story those scrubs were allowed to tell. The applause had barely faded before the gala found a way to own it. Maya noticed it in small movements first. The photographer drifting closer, Evelyn Porter whispering into her headset, Grant Whitaker speaking to two donors while gesturing subtly in Maya's direction, as if she were not a person but a valuable object someone had just discovered in storage. Then the ballroom lights dimmed. A screen lowered behind the stage. Julian, seated beside his father, turned toward Evelyn with a slight frown. He had expected the auction video hospital footage, foundation history, scholarship recipients, something polished and safe. Then Maya's face appeared on the screen. Not from tonight. From Street Bridget's. A photo someone must have pulled from the hospital newsletter. Maya in scrubs, hair messy, holding a clipboard, caught mid-laugh beside Tessa near the nurse's station. Soft piano music began. A narrator's voice filled the ballroom. from humble beginnings to heroic service. Maya stopped breathing normally. The video moved through images of street bridges, emergency room doors, monitors, nurses' hands, patients blurred for privacy. Then came details she had not agreed to share: her mother's years working laundry at the hospital, Diane's breathing condition, Maya helping support her family while serving others. The words were not cruel. That made them harder to reject. They were warm, respectful, emotional, the kind of language designed to make wealthy people feel safely moved. But Maya felt as if someone had opened drawers in her apartment and projected the contents onto a ballroom wall. Her mother's illness was not a violin cue. Her debt was not atmosphere. Her life was not a bridge between dessert and donor pledges. Evelyn stood near the stage, watching the room soften exactly as planned. She was not smiling with malice. She looked almost relieved. To her, this was working. People were leaning forward. Hands were reaching for pledge cards. The video was doing what Gala videos were made to do. It was moving donors. Maya felt herself becoming smaller with every beautiful sentence. Julian rose slowly. His face had changed. He had not known. Maya saw that immediately, and hated how much it mattered. Before he could reach Evelyn, Grant stepped onto the stage with practiced warmth. He thanked the foundation, praised Robert's recovery, and called Maya a living reminder of why generosity matters. Then he proposed a special pledge. Direct support, he said, for Maya Collins and her mother, a chance for the room to show gratitude in a personal, immediate way. People applauded. Maya could not move. The room thought it was loving her. It did not understand that it was undressing her. She turned and walked out. Not fast enough to look dramatic, not slow enough to be stopped. Just out. The hallway beyond the ballroom was quiet, carpeted, and too cold. Maya stood near a marble table with a flower arrangement larger than her kitchen, pressing both hands against its edge until her fingers stopped shaking. Julian came after her. He did not touch her. Good. She did not have enough skin left for comfort. "You promised," she said. The words were not loud, but they carried everything. "I know. You promised I wouldn't be a stunt. I didn't approve that version of the video. But you built the room where it made sense." That landed. Julian looked back toward the ballroom doors. Behind them, applause rose again, muffled by polished wood. Maya's voice sharpened, not with embarrassment now, but clarity. The problem was not that the video was ugly. It was worse because it was beautiful. It turned her mother's oxygen tubing into a symbol. It turned laundry work and medical debt into emotional texture. It made donors feel close to suffering without asking whether they had helped create the distance. "They love nurses when we're on a stage," she said, "when we're exhausted enough to be inspirational, when our uniforms look noble under lighting. But when we need safe staffing, better pay, mental health support, insurance that doesn't make my mother's inhaler feel like a luxury item?" Then suddenly everyone wants a committee. Julian said nothing. There was no defense that would not insult them both. Maya looked at him then, really looked. "You don't get to make me the price of their generosity." He nodded once. Then he went back inside. The video was still playing when Julian stepped onto the stage. He did not wait for the proper transition. He did not look at Evelyn for permission. He took the microphone from Grant with a calmness so complete that half the room failed to realize something had gone wrong until the screen behind him went black. Silence spread unevenly. Julian faced the donors. For the first time all night, he did not sound like a CEO hosting a gala. He sounded like a man choosing a side. He said the foundation had made a mistake. Maya Collins had come to be honored for her professional skill, not to have her private life packaged for emotional convenience. Her mother's health, her family history, and her financial reality were not auction items. Evelyn went pale near the stage. Grant's smile froze. Julian continued, "If the room truly wanted to honor nurses, It would not do so by applauding one woman's hardship until the pledges felt noble. It would fund structures that did not require any nurse to become a story of suffering first. He announced that the special pledge would be redirected, not to Maya personally, not to a sentimental one-night gift, to a new frontline support initiative, continuing education scholarships, caregiver stipends for hospital workers, supporting sick relatives, confidential mental health care, emergency relief funds, and grants shaped with nurses at the decision table. Grant stepped closer to the microphone, voice still pleasant but now edged with warning. "Personal stories move donors," he said. "People gave when they felt connected." Julian looked at him. "If generosity only opens its wallet when someone else is exposed," he said, "that isn't compassion, it's theater." The room tightened. A few donors stood and left. Their chairs scraping back sounded louder than applause. Evelyn watched the exit with visible panic. Years of planning, relationships, and pledges were walking toward the doors in formal wear. Then Robert Hale stood. Slowly, with his cane in one hand and the stubborn pride of a man who had once taught surgical residents not to confuse confidence with competence. He looked across the ballroom. "I was not saved by an inspiring story," Robert said. "I was saved by a professional nurse doing excellent work. If that is not enough reason to give, perhaps you came tonight for the wrong reason." No one spoke. Then Tessa, from a side table Maya had not even known she had reached, began clapping. Robert followed. Then others. Not everyone. That mattered. Some faces remained cold. Some pledge cards stayed folded. Some money had already left the room and would not come back. But the applause that remained sounded different. Less hungry. More awake. In the hallway, Maya heard it through the doors. She did not feel rescued. That would have been too simple. She felt seen in a way that cost something. When Julian came out later, his expression told her enough. The foundation had lost money tonight. Evelyn was furious. Grant was gone. Tomorrow would be ugly. Maya looked at him differently. Not because he had defended her in a room full of powerful people, but because, for once, a powerful man had chosen her dignity over a successful evening and had not pretended the choice was free. By Monday morning, Maya Collins had become a headline people could argue over without knowing her. Some called her the nurse in scrubs who stole the gala. Others said Julian Hale had embarrassed his own foundation by turning a polished fundraiser into a lecture. A morning host praised Maya's authentic courage with the same tone people used for rescue dogs. One donor posted that charity should inspire gratitude, not guilt. Grant Whitaker withdrew his pledge before lunch. By Tuesday, Evelyn Porter was in Julian's office, with financial projections, donor emails, and the exhausted expression of a woman watching millions of dollars evaporate because someone had discovered ethics under stage lighting. If the major pledge stayed gone, she warned, the foundation might lose next year's scholarship expansion. Smaller hospitals waiting on equipment grants would be delayed. Julian's decision had protected Maya from public exploitation, but the cost would not remain poetic. It would become numbers, people, programs. Julian knew that. It was the part of doing the right thing that no speech made beautiful. At Street Bridget's, Maya returned to the ER wearing the same kind of scrubs that had made strangers clap 2 nights before. Nobody clapped now. A man in room 4 was vomiting into a basin. A child in triage had stuck a sticker to the pulse oximeter. The printer at the nurse's station jammed 3 times, then made a noise that suggested it had chosen death. Tessa saluted her with a cafeteria coffee. Cinderella in compression socks has returned. Maya took the cup and sniffed it. This smells like a lawsuit. It's the good batch. There's a good batch? No, but morale requires fiction. For a few minutes, it was almost funny. Then life resumed its usual shape. Her mother needed a refill. The rent notice sat on the kitchen counter. Maya's student loan payment was due. Fame had not paid a single bill. Applause had not covered a shift. Nobody from the gala was present when she cleaned blood from a stretcher rail at 3 a.m., or argued with a supply closet that had run out of medium gloves again. Julian called once, then texted. Then, with the caution of a man learning boundaries in real time, asked whether he could help privately with Diane's medication or Maya's rent. Maya stared at the message longer than she wanted to admit. She was tired enough to be tempted. That frightened her. At home, Diane saw the look on her face before Maya said anything. Her mother sat at the kitchen table with her oxygen machine humming softly beside her, folding napkins they did not need folded. Diane listened, then reminded Maya that dignity did not mean refusing every hand extended toward her. Pride could become another kind of cage if a person mistook suffering alone for strength. Maya knew that. But she also knew the danger of becoming an exception. She did not want her mother's breathing to improve because the CEO liked her. She did not want her life quietly repaired while Tessa kept picking up extra shifts, while respiratory techs skipped meals, while nurses with sick parents smiled at posters about resilience in break rooms without working microwaves. If help came, it had to come through a door other people could walk through too. Julian seemed to understand before she fully explained. He came to Street Bridget's the following week without flowers, cameras, or a speech. He asked to meet hospital leadership and, more importantly, staff who usually only saw donors in framed photos. At first, the room was suspicious. Nurses had been studied before, surveyed, thanked, photographed, asked to share frontline insight by people who later funded another shiny machine with a plaque and no budget for the exhausted human required to operate it. Julian listened anyway. He heard about retention bonuses that never came, continuing education nurses could not afford, staff caring for sick parents without paid support, mental health programs outsourced to apps nobody used, shift coverage so thin that calling in sick felt like betraying coworkers. He learned the Hale Foundation had been excellent at funding visible generosity. New monitors, renovated waiting rooms, research galas, scholarship dinners with linen napkins. It had been far less interested in the unphotogenic things that kept healthcare workers alive enough to keep helping. Evelyn sat through those meetings too. At first, with crossed arms, then with notes. By the time they returned to the Foundation boardroom, she understood something she did not like, admitting, Maya had not damaged the gala. Maya had revealed its blind spot. Grant Whitaker attended the donor meeting with several allies, and an apology already written for Julian to deliver. He expected a correction, a return to moving stories, elegant videos, curated tears, and fundraising language that let donors feel intimate with hardship without being inconvenienced by it. Julian could have saved the short-term budget that way. Instead, he announced the Frontline Dignity Fund. No personal story would be used without clear consent. Funding priorities would include caregiver stipends, continuing education, emergency relief, mental health support, and shift stability grants. Nurses and frontline workers would sit on the advisory council with voting power. Outcomes would be transparent. The fund would start smaller than planned, because money without dignity was no longer acceptable to him as success. Grant stood, then left. A few others followed. The silence afterward was heavy enough to bruise. Then an elderly retired surgeon pledged a modest amount in Robert Hale's honor. A former patient added another. A nurses' union representative offered partnership instead of applause. Smaller donors stepped forward. Not as many, not as grand, but with fewer conditions attached to their compassion. The fund survived. Not beautifully. Honestly. That evening, Julian met Maya outside Street Bridget's, near the ambulance bay where the air smelled like rain and disinfectant. He did not say he had done it for her. She would have hated that. He said she had made him see something he should have seen long before she walked into his gala in scrubs. Maya looked at him for a while, tired eyes, unreadable. She still did not say yes to dinner. Not yet. She needed to know whether he could keep doing the right thing when she was not in the room to remind him. Julian nodded. That's a fair standard. Maya's mouth curved. That standard is lower than ER coffee, she said, but it's a start. By spring, the Frontline Dignity Fund had stopped being an apology and started becoming paperwork. That was how Maya knew it might actually matter. Real change did not arrive with violins. It arrived in application forms, committee meetings, eligibility requirements, arguments over budget language, and nurses asking whether the program would still exist after the cameras left. So far, it did. It was smaller than the original Gala plan, less glamorous, less useful for magazine spreads, but it was real. 2 ER nurses received scholarships for nurse practitioner programs. A respiratory therapist caring for her disabled father qualified for a caregiver stipend. Street, Bridget's began a COPD support pilot for families of hospital employees, not because Diane Collins was special, but because too many families like hers had been surviving quietly in the margins. Diane applied. She was approved. Maya read the letter 3 times, searching for Julian's fingerprints. There were none. The approval came through the same process as everyone else's, documented, ordinary, fair. Somehow, that made it feel more miraculous than a private check ever could have. Maya also applied for an advanced clinical certification. She was accepted because of her record, her recommendations, and the fact that half the ER would have rioted if anyone questioned her competence. Tessa celebrated by taping a paper crown to Maya's locker that read, "Cinderella in compression socks, RN, future menace." At the Hale Foundation, Evelyn Porter stayed. She did not become soft overnight. Maya respected that. Softness was not the same as growth. Evelyn still cared about donors, budgets, and whether every public statement had been approved by legal. But the stories changed. There were fewer tears edited over piano music, more consent forms, more numbers that mattered, more frontline workers speaking for themselves instead of being narrated into inspiration. Julian changed too, though not in a way designed for headlines. He showed up less on stages and more in rooms where no one clapped. He listened longer, interrupted less. Learned that dignity, once made a policy word, required constant defense from people who wanted it simplified. When he finally asked Maya to dinner, it was not at a Michelin-starred restaurant or a foundation event with floral centerpieces. It was a diner 3 blocks from Street Bridget's, the kind with sticky menus, tired booths, and pancakes served all day. Maya arrived straight from shift, still in scrubs. This time, she did not wear them to make a point. She wore them because they were what she had on after 12 hours of work, 2 difficult patients, 1 printer jam, and a vending machine that had stolen Tessa's last dollar with criminal confidence. Julian was already waiting in a booth. No suit. A gray sweater, dark jeans, hair slightly less controlled than usual. Maya stopped beside the table and studied him. "You look almost unemployed." "I was aiming for approachable." "Careful. That's how diners get suspicious." He stood, then seemed unsure whether to hug her, shake her hand, or formally acknowledge the pancakes. Maya slid into the booth before he could injure the moment. When the waitress arrived, Julian examined the menu with the concentration of a man reading a merger agreement. He asked whether the pancakes had any seasonal sourcing. Maya lowered her coffee cup. "If you make pancakes nervous, I'm leaving." The waitress stared at him. Julian closed the menu. "Regular pancakes, please." "Excellent recovery," Maya said. Over dinner, he did not call her brave. He did not call her a hero. He asked about her certification program, Diane's breathing, Tessa's ongoing war with the vending machine. He spoke about the fund without trying to make it sound larger than it was. Then, carefully, he asked whether this could be a real date. No gala, no donors, no spotlight, No room full of people requiring her to defend her own dignity before dessert. Maya looked at him across the table. "Yes," she said. "But if you ever call me a healthcare hero during a date, I will pour syrup on your shoes." Julian nodded solemnly. "That seems proportionate." After dinner, Maya stopped by her mother's apartment before heading home. Diane was on the couch with a blanket over her knees and a game show glowing on low volume. "So," Diane asked, "what did you wear on your first real date?" Maya looked down at her scrubs. For once, she did not see stains that might happen, pockets full of chaos, or fabric the world had taught her to undervalue. She smiled. "Something I'm proud of." Later, Julian waited beneath the diner's warm neon sign, hands in his sweater pockets, not trying to pull Maya into his world, only meeting her in hers. Their love had not begun when he told her to wear her scrubs. It began when he understood her dignity was never his to give. It only needed him to stop standing in rooms that allowed other people to take it away. Sometimes dignity is not loud. It is a woman walking into a room in the clothes she works in. It is a mother reminding her daughter to stand straight. It is a man with power, learning that respect is not something he gives to others like charity. It is something he must stop the world from taking away. Maya did not need a gown to become worthy. She had already proven who she was under fluorescent ER lights, with tired hands, steady breath, and pockets full of tools no ballroom could understand. And Julian did not win her heart by buying her a dress. He began to earn her trust when he made room for her to arrive as herself. "So tell me, would you have worn the scrubs? Would you have stood up in that ballroom? And have you ever been made to feel small in a place that should have honored you?" This is Soul-Stirring Stories. The right person will never ask you to dress up your worth. They will stand beside you until the world learns to see it,